Hi, welcome to my tutorial on how to install and implement a VPN or virtual private network. Now what is this exactly? Well, a VPN basically grants users remote access to a private network via a public network such as the internet. Now how do we go about installing this feature? Well, we go to our server and we click on our server manager icon and we go to our roles summary tab if I can find it. And we select add roles. We click next, and the role that we are going to add here today is the network policy and access services. We select that. This is basically another little introduction into what it does. It says it allows you to provide local and remote network access and to define and enforce policies for network access authentication, authorization, and client help using network policy server. We click next, and under select roles services, we are going to select two services to be installed. The first is a network policy server and the second is the routing and remote access services. This routing and remote access services basically provides remote users access to the resources on our private network over a virtual private network or dial-up connection. What we're going to use is really a virtual private network. So we click next and install. Alright, so we can see here that our roles have been installed successfully. So we can close this and we can see that it has been added to our list of roles. Now that that is completed, our next step is to configure our network policy and access services. So we go to Start, Administrative Tools, and we select Network Policy Server. And here we have a few settings that we can configure, but what we're going to configure right now is our policies. So we go to the Policies tab, send it down a bit, and under Network Policies you right click and we select New. Now you can name this policy whatever it is that you'd like it to be. I will name mine OS Platform VPN policy. And then the type of network access server, we would select remote access server or VPN or dial-up, and we click next. Here we can specify the conditions that we want to determine the type of connections that are made to our via the VPN. So we can click add, and there's a number of conditions that you can use, but for now, for this purpose of this tutorial, all we are going to focus on is the connection properties or the network connections. So under this tab we scroll down to tunneling type. Now this type of condition restricts policy to only clients that create a specific type of tunnel such as pptp or L2TP. So this is what we're focusing on, so we can add that. And the tunnel type that we're going to select, as we read here in the little description, is pptp. So you would see it here, pptp, you'll select that, as well as L2TP or layer 2 tunneling protocols, and we can click OK to that. So you'll see it selected here or added in our conditions, and then we click next. We will grant access to this option configures whether you want to grant network access or deny network access, and we are going to grant network access. Click next. Now under authentication methods, we're gonna deselect user can change password after it has expired, and deselect MSCHAP or Microsoft encrypted authentication, and we click next. Now under configure constraints, these are just some different constraints or restrictions that you can set as an administrator with regards to the amount of time that persons are allowed access, VPN or remote access, onto your private network. So you can select how many minutes that the server could remain idle before they disconnect the connection. You can set a time limit as to the amount of time a person can be connected onto your network. You can select certain days and times that your user can access your network, and some other little access types, access media types to match the policy. We don't really need that. We can leave that as default. When we click next, on this page we will leave everything as the default as well. Click next and finish. So now that our VPN or policy has been configured, you can see the green arrow there which shows that it has been configured and enabled. Now that our network policy server has been configured, we can close this off, and next we're going to configure our remote routing and remote access option. So we go to Start, Administrative Tools, and you select Routing and Remote Access. Now, how do you know that it's not configured? You would see the red arrow next to our server name. Once our routing and remote access has been properly configured and connected, this red arrow will turn to green. How do we configure our server? We right click on it and you would see the option there, configure and enable routing and remote access. So we will select that. Then another little wizard box would come up. We just follow the wizard. So we click next. Configuration, we are going to, for the purpose of this tutorial, select custom configuration. Click next. The services that we would want to enable on this server is a VPN access. Click next, and that's basically it. Click finish, and we select OK to that. Do we want to start the service? Yes, we do. We start service. And finish. Now if you look across to our Windows Server name, you would see that the arrow has turned to green, which means that our server has been configured and that remote routing and remote access has been enabled. And because of that, you see a number of options showing up here. Our network interfaces, remote access client. We won't have any as yet because we haven't added any users to be granted access to our VPN. These are the ports that we have. If you look in the list, you would see there are many different types of ports. And a number of other settings that we can configure as we go along. Now, one thing I want to show you is under the ports tab. If you right click and you go to properties, you would see the different types of ports that are available, and you would see the two that we have selected here. the L2TP port as well as the pptp port. Now next to it you would see a number. This number basically grants a maximum amount of devices that can be connected to this particular port. So therefore, if you're running a network and you know that you have 10 computers, 10 users connected to that network, you can configure this port to accept connections from only these 10 computers, no more. How do we do this? We just select it and click configure, and on the maximum ports you enter the number of computers that you would want granted access to your network. You would get this box asking if you want to continue. You click yes, and you would see the number has changed from the maximum 128 that was there earlier to 10. So we can also change this to change the other port that we have to our maximum number as well. So 10. Click OK. And we're good to go with regards to that. Now that is it basically for the configuration on our server side machine. Now what we want to do is log into a client's machine, and then we can continue the installation or implementation of the VPN on that client's machine. So I'm going to use a Windows 7 machine. I'm going to log on as my user. Right, so we're logged on as our user. Now we're going to set up the connection, and we do this by going to our network connection, and open a network and sharing center, and we're going to set up a new connection or network. The option that we're going to choose is connect to a workplace or set up a dial-up or VPN connection. Click next. We will use my internet connection, but I will set up my internet connection later. On the internet address, we enter the IP address of our server. In my case, it's 192.168.0.1, and we leave the destination name as the default. Click next. The username and password that we're going to enter here is the username of the user whose machine we are logged on to. So in this case, it's Orlando Bloom's machine. So I will enter his username as well as his password credentials, and I will click create. And it says that my connection is ready to use. You can close this off. So in order to see whether our VPN connection has been set up, we go to change adapter settings, and you can see here that we have our VPN connection installed. Now we can also see that it is disconnected. So what we can do is right click and select connect, and it will prompt us for username and password credentials in order to grant us access to this VPN connection, and we click connect. And we see that my VPN has been connected successfully. If you right click, actually you can see that it's also connected to my domain. If you right click and you go to status and you go to details, if you look under IP version 4, you can see that it is connected to my server. You can see the server's IP address 192.168.0.1. It's connected to my my domain, osplatforms.com, and this would be the IP address granted to this machine via my DHCP server. Now if we go back to our server and we go to Start Administrative Tools Network Policy Server, I'm just going to show you how we can add a few constraints to our VPN, which would allow or disallow users to connect to our VPN. So we go to our Policies tab, and under Network Policies you would see our VPN policy that we enabled previously with the green arrow. That's the one that's enabled. You can right click on that and select Properties, and under Constraints you may have seen this screen before, and we can go to Day and Time Constrictions. Here, if you select Allow Access only on these days and at these times, it allows you to edit the days and times that persons can be allowed onto your VPN. Now, a normal workday in any normal corporation is usually a Monday to Friday work week. So we can deselect the weekend. So by just clicking on the first box and dragging it down to the end, that would take up the whole of Sunday, and you select Denied. And that's as simple as it is. You select the whole of Saturday and you select Denied as well. Once this area isn't blue or selected, it means that persons cannot be granted access to our VPN on these days. Now a typical work week would be, a work day would be 8 to 4. So we can deselect any times outside of this period. And there we go. If you click on the first box, it would show you the time that it's starting, and on the last it would tell you when it's ending. 5 p.m. we would fix that so that it would end at 4 p.m. Click OK and apply to make any changes, that we made, and OK. And this is basically how you set up, implement and manage a VPN connection to grant access to your users, remote access to your users, to your private network. Thank you.